Leo was only 6 years old. He had soft brown curls, round cheeks, and an imagination that never seemed to rest. His favorite place in the entire house wasn't the playroom or even the garden, it was the attic. The attic was dusty, full of boxes, broken chairs, old books, and forgotten clothes. To a child like Leo, it was a magical kingdom full of secrets. His father, Thomas, was a busy man who often worked late. And his nanny, Camila, was the one who spent the most time with him, feeding him, bathing him, reading bedtime stories. Camila wasn't very old herself. She was in her late 20s, with gentle features and tired eyes that always seemed to hide a storm behind them. But she had a kind smile, and Leo adored her. It was a rainy afternoon when it all began. Camila was in the laundry room, folding tiny socks and humming a lullaby she didn't even realize she remembered. She had heard it somewhere long ago, but she couldn't place it. Meanwhile, Leo had quietly sneaked upstairs again. He was always told not to go into the attic alone, but rules didn't mean much to him, not when he was on a mission to find buried treasure. The attic creaked under his small feet. A little spider ran past the dusty frame. The light from the small window flickered with every flash of lightning. But Leo was brave. He started opening boxes, one by one, until he found a flat, velvet-covered book. It wasn't treasure, but it looked special. Curious, he opened it and flipped through faded photographs. Most were old and uninteresting. But near the back, one photo caught his attention. It was of a man, a woman, and a baby. They were standing in front of a small house. The man had a proud smile. The baby was laughing. But the woman's face had been scratched out, deeply, with something sharp, maybe a pen or knife. Her outline was still there, but her face was gone. Leo didn't think much of it. To him, it was just an old, weird photo. He took it and ran back downstairs. "Mom, I found a photo in the attic," he shouted happily, running to Camila. Camila didn't respond at first. She was so used to Leo calling her mom by mistake that she barely noticed anymore. He had lost his mother a few years ago. She died suddenly, and though Camila never got the full story, she knew Leo had been very young when it happened. Too young to remember her. So, sometimes, he'd call Camila mom without thinking. And sometimes, she didn't correct him. Camila turned and smiled. "What did you find now, little explorer?" she asked. Leo handed her the photo, his small fingers still dusty. "This. Isn't it funny? The lady's face is all scratched out." Camila took the photo in one hand, still holding a sock in the other. She looked down, and the world seemed to stop. She dropped the sock. The moment her eyes met the image, her breath caught in her throat. Her heart began to race. Her hand trembled so hard that the photo almost slipped from her fingers. "No," she whispered without meaning to. The man in the photo, his face, his smile, it was Thomas. Leo's father. But he looked much younger. Maybe in his early 20s. He was standing in front of a small brick house that looked nothing like the one they lived in now. Camila felt her knees go weak. And then there was the baby in the photo. Something about the way that baby smiled, the eyes, the chubby cheeks, it looked like Leo. But it couldn't be. Could it? Her gaze moved to the woman. Her face was scratched out, but her posture, her hair, the way she tilted slightly to one side, it all felt too familiar. She couldn't understand why, but her stomach twisted. She turned the photo over. There was something written on the back in smudged pen. "T, C and baby Leo, are forever." Camila's blood ran cold. T for Thomas. C for Camila. Baby Leo? No. It didn't make sense. She stood frozen for a moment, staring at the name as if it could erase itself. As if she could pretend she didn't just read what she read. "Where did you get this?" she asked slowly, her voice softer than usual. "In the attic." Leo said proudly. "There's a big box of old stuff." It was inside. Camila sat down on the edge of the couch, the photo still in her hand. the air suddenly felt heavier. She tried to breathe but her chest felt tight. She had taken this job only 6 months ago. A friend of hers had recommended her to the family. Thomas was looking for someone to help take care of his son, since he worked late and the boy had no mother. The pay was good, and Camila needed a place to stay. She remembered the first time she met Thomas. He had stared at her longer than necessary, but said nothing strange. He seemed to recognize her. But she had just smiled politely and ignored it. At the time, she assumed he stared because she looked like someone he knew. Now she wasn't so sure. She got up quietly and walked to her bedroom, locking the door behind her. Her hands were still shaking. She took out an old wallet from her bag and pulled a folded paper from a hidden pocket. It was a hospital discharge sheet, from years ago. It had her name, Camila Rodriguez. It had the baby's gender, male. And it had a time, 4:06 a.m. She closed her eyes and whispered, "No. I gave him away. I signed the papers. It was over." But was it? Was he her child? Had Thomas found him? Had he known who she was all along? Camila looked at the photo again. Thomas. Camila. Baby Leo. Everything she had buried, everything she thought she had left behind, it had found her. And it all started with a little boy's innocent words. "Mom, I found a photo in the attic." Camila barely slept that night. Her mind couldn't rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that photo. Her own face, scratched out. The same man she now worked for, standing beside her, younger. The baby that looked like Leo. And the writing on the back, T.C. and Baby Leo, are forever. She kept telling herself it had to be a mistake. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe the woman in the picture only looked like her. Maybe the C wasn't for her name at all. But deep down, she knew better. That photo was real. The writing was his. And worst of all, Leo looked exactly like the newborn she gave away 6 years ago. Camila lay in bed, holding the same piece of paper she had looked at the night before, the hospital discharge form. She was 19 when she gave birth. Terrified. Alone. Her parents had thrown her out when she told them she was pregnant. She didn't have anyone. At first, she thought she could raise the baby. But when the father, Thomas, acted cold and distant, and when his wife threatened her behind closed doors, she gave up. They made it clear, she wasn't welcome in their lives anymore. She remembered the last thing Julia, Thomas's wife, had said to her. "If you love that child, don't ruin his life. Disappear." So she did. She ran. She gave birth in another city. And as soon as they handed her the papers, she signed them and left the baby behind. She didn't even hold him for more than a minute. She told herself it was for the best. But now, Leo was here. In this house. Her employer's son. And possibly, her own. The next morning, Camila got up early. She looked at herself in the mirror. She saw a woman who had worked hard to move on. Someone who had rebuilt her life piece by piece. But now, her past had found her again. She washed her face, took a deep breath, and stepped out of her room. Leo was already up, sitting at the table, eating cereal and swinging his little legs. He looked so peaceful. So happy. "Good morning, Camila," he chirped. "Are we going to play today?" She tried to smile. "Of course." But her voice cracked slightly. Thomas came downstairs soon after. Dressed sharp as always. A black suit. Gold watch. Coffee in hand. "Morning," he said to both of them. Camila watched his face. She tried to study it differently now. Was there guilt behind his eyes? Did he know? He gave Leo a quick kiss on the head and walked over to grab his briefcase. "Don't forget Leo has that school event at 3 p.m., he said. Camila nodded. "All right then, I'll be home late," Thomas added as he picked up his keys. "You two have fun." He smiled, calm, polite, the same as always. But she noticed something that made her stomach twist. He didn't look her in the eyes. After Thomas left, Camila waited until Leo was busy drawing pictures on the kitchen floor. Then, she went back to the attic. Her hands were sweating. Her breath was shaky. But she had to know more. This time, she opened every single box. Most of them had ordinary things, old books, broken toys, dusty frames. But one box, shoved into the farthest corner, had no label. She pulled it toward her and opened it. Inside was a small, sealed envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were hospital documents. Adoption records. DNA test results. And her name. Clear as day. Camila Rodriguez. Her name was on the birth certificate of Leo Thomas Whitmore. She gasped so loudly that a box next to her toppled over. Her knees gave out. She sat on the attic floor, reading the same page over and over. It was true. She hadn't just ended up working in a stranger's house. She hadn't just randomly bonded with a child. This wasn't an accident. Thomas had found the baby she gave up. And now, she was unknowingly raising her own son. Camila walked slowly down the stairs, gripping the envelope in one hand like it was too dangerous to let go. She sat on the couch and tried to breathe. What did this mean? Did Thomas know she was Camila Rodriguez? The same girl he once left behind? Or did he think she was someone else? But why would he keep all this? Why would he keep a box labeled with her son's name? Why would he hide a picture of them together? And more importantly, why had he taken Leo back? She needed answers. But she couldn't ask, not yet. She needed to be sure he recognized her first. And if he didn't, she had to find out why he had raised her son in secret. That night, she couldn't help staring at Leo as she tucked him in. "Do you love me, Camila?" Leo asked sleepily, hugging his stuffed bear. She swallowed hard. "More than you'll ever know," she whispered. As she turned off the light and closed his door, her mind was spinning. There was only one way to get the full truth. She had to open the one door that was always locked. Camila couldn't ignore it anymore. All signs pointed to one terrifying truth: Leo was her child. The same baby she gave up at birth. The same child she thought she'd never see again. And somehow, Thomas, her old boss, Leo's father, had raised him in secret. She had found the photo, the hospital bracelet, the DNA paperwork. But there was one thing she still didn't understand: how Thomas knew where the baby was, and why he took him back. Camila remembered something strange. There was a room upstairs, small, at the end of the hallway. It had always been locked. She had asked once what was inside, but Thomas had quickly said, "Just old junk. I keep it locked because the door's loose." That answer never made sense to her. Now, she was sure, whatever secrets Thomas didn't want her to see were hidden behind that door. It was late that night when Camila made up her mind. Leo had fallen asleep hours earlier. Thomas had texted that he'd be working late again. She tiptoed through the house, her heart pounding in her chest. When she reached the door at the end of the hallway, she paused. Her hand trembled as she touched the doorknob. It was still locked. She stared at it, unsure what to do. Then, without thinking, she turned and went to Thomas's study. She knew he sometimes left his desk drawer open, and tonight, luck was on her side. The drawer slid open with ease, and inside was a small silver key on a black leather chain. She grabbed it and rushed back. It fit perfectly. The door creaked as it opened, releasing a smell of old wood, dust, and something else, something like perfume. A scent she hadn't smelled in years, but couldn't forget. She stepped inside slowly. The room was small, barely big enough for a crib, a rocking chair, and a bookshelf. But everything was still there. A baby's room, preserved like a time capsule. It wasn't used now, but it had clearly once belonged to Leo. On the wall, above the crib, was a hand-painted name. Leo. Camila's eyes filled with tears. She stepped closer. The crib was filled with old baby toys. Soft blankets. A rattle she recognized, because she had chosen it when she was still pregnant. It had belonged to her unborn child. There was no way this was a coincidence. She knelt beside the bookshelf and pulled down a box labeled letters. Inside were envelopes, all unopened, addressed to her name. Camila Rodriguez. Some were yellowed with age. Some looked fresh. She opened one. Her hands shook as she unfolded the paper. It was a letter, from Thomas. Camila, I don't know where you went. I don't blame you for running. Julia was cruel to you, and I was too much of a coward to stop her. But I found him. Our son. I had to fight for him, legally, emotionally, but I got him back. He deserves to know you. He has your eyes. He laughs like you. Please, come back someday. Even if you never forgive me. Just, come see him. Camila dropped the letter. Tears streamed down her face. He had tried to reach her. All these years, she thought she was forgotten. She thought they erased her. But Thomas had been writing to her. Even when she vanished. Even when she changed her name. He kept a room for their son. Kept her rattle. Her memory. Everything. Then she saw something else, an old laptop. She turned it on. It still worked. The screen lit up and opened to a folder labeled Leo's first years. Inside were hundreds of photos and videos. The first time he walked. His first birthday. Christmas mornings. Laughing in the bathtub. Camila covered her mouth with her hand. She had missed everything. Not just the pregnancy. Not just the delivery. She had missed his first laugh. His first tooth. His first steps. But somehow, she was here now. And that little boy who called her mom by mistake. He was right. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut downstairs. Camila froze. She quickly turned off the laptop, closed the box, and tiptoed out of the room. She locked the door again and returned the key to Thomas's desk drawer, just in time. Thomas stepped into the hallway a few seconds later. He looked exhausted, but smiled when he saw her. Still awake? Camila tried to sound casual. Just making sure everything's ready for Leo's school day tomorrow. Thomas nodded. Thanks. I don't know what I'd do without you. Camila looked at him for a long moment. There were so many things she wanted to ask. So many things she wanted to say. But instead, she smiled gently and whispered, "Neither do I." That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what to do next. She had answers now. But even more questions. Thomas had found Leo. Fought for custody. Raised him with love. Tried to reach out. Kept everything from her past safe. But why hadn't he told her when she applied for the nanny job? Did he know who she was the entire time? Or had it taken him weeks to realize? Either way, Camila knew she couldn't keep pretending. Leo was her son. And she wasn't just a nanny anymore. She was his mother. The next morning, she woke early. She prepared Leo's lunch, combed his hair, packed his school bag. But her hands kept trembling. She wasn't sure how long she could hold the truth inside. Just as they were walking out the door, Leo tugged at her sleeve and looked up at her. "Camila," he said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Do you think my real mom watches over me?" Camila felt her throat close up. She knelt and looked into his eyes. "Yes," she said. "I think she's always been closer than you know." Leo smiled and hugged her tight. And Camila closed her eyes, hugging him back, fighting the tears. Because now, she didn't just want the truth. She needed it. And she was ready for whatever came next. Camila had lived with unanswered questions her entire life. For years, she believed she made the right decision when she signed the adoption papers and walked out of that hospital without her baby. She told herself it was the only choice she had. That she was too young, too poor, too powerless to fight back. But now, holding Leo's school jacket in one hand and gripping her own trembling heart in the other, she knew nothing had ever hurt more than finding out the child she thought was lost forever had been right in front of her all along. And she wasn't just raising him as a nanny. She was his real mother. After sneaking into the locked nursery, reading Thomas's hidden letters, and seeing her name on the adoption documents, Camila was no longer confused. She was angry. Heartbroken. But more than anything, she needed the truth from Thomas. That same evening, she sat Leo down in front of the TV and asked him to wait there. He smiled up at her, unaware of the storm building in the next room. Camila stood by the kitchen table, gripping the photo, the one Leo had found in the attic, and waited. When Thomas walked in, he was loosening his tie and seemed relaxed, like it was just another normal day. But it wasn't. She didn't speak right away. She just placed the photo gently on the table in front of him. Thomas stopped mid-step. His eyes locked onto the picture. And for the first time since she had known him, he looked scared. He stepped closer. His voice low. "Where did you find that?" Camila didn't answer his question. Instead, she asked her own. "You knew who I was from the beginning, didn't you?" Thomas said nothing. She stared at him harder. "You hired me, because you knew." He slowly sat down. His shoulders slumped. "Yes," he said quietly. "I knew." Camila swallowed hard, her chest tightening. "So why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell me Leo was mine?" He looked up at her, pain written all over his face. "Because I didn't know what you wanted anymore," he said. "You ran away. You disappeared. I thought maybe you didn't want anything to do with either of us." Camila took a deep breath. "You don't get to decide that for me." Thomas nodded. "I know. I know. I kept everything. The letters, the room, the photos. I searched for you for years, Camila. You changed your name. You left no address. No contact. And then one day, out of nowhere, I get your resume from a friend, asking to be a nanny." He gave a half-laugh. "I thought fate was playing a joke on me." Camila blinked. "So why didn't you tell me then?" "I was scared," he said honestly. "You looked at me like I was a stranger. Like I was just another boss. You were so careful. So distant. I thought, maybe you didn't remember." "I remembered," she whispered. "I remembered everything." They sat in silence for a while. Then Camila finally asked the question that haunted her the most. "How did you find him?" "After I gave him up." Thomas leaned back and looked toward the window. "After you left, Julia and I separated. I couldn't live with her anymore. I tried to track you down, but I couldn't. But I knew you were pregnant. I waited for months, and then I got a call from a nurse who worked at a maternity home out of town. She had recognized my last name on the papers and connected the dots." "You took him?" Camila asked. "I filed for custody. I didn't want him going to strangers. It took time, money, court fights. But yes, eventually, I got him. I raised him alone." Julia passed away a few years later. Cancer. Camila didn't know what to feel. Grief? Relief? Rage? She just felt tired. "Leo called me Mom that day," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "When he found the photo. I thought it was just a slip." Thomas looked down. "He always calls you that when he's scared." Camila blinked back tears. "I think, part of him knows," Thomas added quietly. "He feels it. In his heart." Camila shook her head. "He deserves the truth." "I agree," Thomas said. "But only if it's what you want." Camila stared at him. "Do you want to be his mother again?" The question made her heart stop. Was she ready for that? Could she just walk back in and reclaim a title she gave up? But the moment she pictured Leo's smile, The way he hugged her, the way he looked at her for comfort, for love, the answer became clear. "I never stopped being his mother," she said. "I just didn't know I still had a chance." The next morning, Camila sat with Leo on the porch steps. He was playing with a toy truck, talking nonstop about school, frogs, lunchboxes, and clouds. Camila smiled, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "Leo," she said softly, "can I tell you something?" He looked up, curious. "There's something very special about you," she said. "And there's something very special about me too." "Do you know what that is?" Leo shook his head. Camila took his tiny hand in hers. "I'm not just your nanny," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm your real mom." Leo blinked. "You mean, you're my mom?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes. I always was. I just didn't know I'd get to see you again." Leo didn't say anything at first. Then slowly, he leaned forward and wrapped his arms around her. "I already knew," he whispered into her shoulder. "I felt it." That night, Camila sat on her bed, looking at a new photo. It was of her, Thomas, and Leo, standing in front of the porch. Laughing. No faces were scratched out. No one was missing. No one was hiding anymore. The truth was out. The past had found her, but so had her future. And this time, she wasn't letting go. Not again. Not ever.